And welcome back to Open Mic. Want to remind everybody to stop by Jack's Car Wash and treat your vehicle to the care it deserves. With over 50 locations across Michigan, you're never far from a clean car. And right now you can score a free wash. Just visit wlink.live/sportscaster. That's WLINK.live/sportscaster to redeem and experience the Jack difference for yourself. It is week 8 of high school football, and our drive to the game promo pits Howell against Brighton. Our drive to the game host is Giovanni Moceri, proud graduate of Oakland University, and he tells us everything we need to know heading into Friday night's matchup.
My name is Giovanni Moceri, your host of Drive to the Game, and as we get towards the tail end of the high school football season, we get to the games where it's all on the line, at least before the playoffs. Towards the end of the regular season here, many conferences are wrapping up their conference play, and many of these games late in the season come down to a winner takes the conference championship. The stakes are very high, and just about as high as they can get for the regular season, and we got a great one for you guys coming up this Friday night from Brighton High School as they will host Howell in a game that could directly decide the conference championship in the Kensington Lake Activities Association West, the KLAA West, one of the most competitive conferences that we have here in Michigan. Pre-game show starts at 6:50 exclusively here on Sportscaster.com as well as our YouTube channel before we kick things off at 7 p.m. kickoff to Chris Renwick and our student broadcasters on WJR as well as our previously mentioned platforms. The Bulldogs and the Highlanders will be doing battle for top of the conference. And there are many ways this game can go. I'll try to simplify the implications of the conference championship for this because there's many different ways they can go, because it's not just Brighton and Howell that are fighting for it, but Northville is right there in terms of being crowned themselves. Howell and Northville sit at 5-1 at a tied second and third in the conference. Meanwhile, Brighton sits at the top, a perfect conference record of 6-0 and an overall record of 6-1. Their only loss coming in week 1 to Dexter, who is regarded as one of the top 15 teams in the state, depending on where you look. Out of conference, so no huge deal in terms of the conference standings. Their only loss being to a very good team, so Brighton is no joke. And as far as the scenarios go, if Brighton wins this game, they go to 7-0 in conference, and that locks up the conference championship outright. They will be crowned champions. But if they do not, if Howell defeats them, both teams will be sitting at 6-1. And then if Northville is able to chip in their last game of the conference season, they will also be 6-1. And then you get into all kind of very wordy tiebreakers about how to decide the winner, whether it's co-champions or an outright championship out of 3 teams with the 6-1 conference record. I'll spare you guys the wordy explanation for it, but the way the game is set here, if Brighton wins it, they get it on their own, and if they don't, there's a lot else that could happen to either force them a co-championship or none at all. So huge stakes in this game here. And to set the stage even further for this game, this is the first time these two teams have seen each other since the playoffs. It's no different than many of the other games that we've covered on Drive to the Game, where it's a playoff revenge game in the regular season, but this one has a little bit of extra kick to it. It was not in the opening round, and it was not in the district semifinals either. This last meeting was in the district championship, and it was a close one. To paint the picture for you guys, it was kind of a flip of the table as far as the two teams coming into it. In last year, it was Howell that came into that game and won the conference championship with a 7-0 record. They made their way over to the district championship. Meanwhile, it was Brighton, who was 7-2 overall, 5-2 in conference, and they've matched up against the Highlanders. The final score of that game is a gut-wrenching 35-33 Howell gets the victory before losing in the regional final to Hudsonville. So that's where we leave off and come into this game here, another one to decide the fate of their season in one night. They get to have it in their past two matchups. It's going to be a ton of fun, a ton on the line, and a lot of talent between these two teams, and we'll get into them next. So the Brighton Bulldogs are on a crazy streak when it comes to this season, and they do it behind a very young offensive core. Many of their skilled players are sophomores or even juniors, of course, backed up by senior leadership in other positions, but specifically, I want to highlight the sophomore quarterback Dom Agosto, as well as sophomore running back Dom Noss. Now, as far as the running back is concerned, he is one of the fastest running backs to reach 1,000 yards in a season in Livingston County history. By week 6, he already passed the 1,000-yard mark, and he's had highlight plays all throughout the season, some of the most recent of which came in their win against Salem, where he had 19 carries for 149 yards and 2 touchdowns. One of those touchdowns came on a 62-yard run. And in addition to that, another sophomore core piece to the offense is sophomore wide receiver Jamo Parcell, who in that same game had 4 catches for 70 yards and is usually good for around 4 catches and around that some yards. So he's very productive and makes that offense not even close to being one-dimensional, as Augusto is able to balance things very well and get the job done by sharing the rock to all of the very talented players that Brighton has on that offense. And taking a look at their most recent schedule, kind of to prove the offense's lethality, in their past 2 games against Plymouth, 52 points scored in a 52-3 win over Plymouth. 35-14 against Plymouth Salem in just their past 2 games. We'll get to the same topic when it comes to Howell, but this is a very dangerous, very young offensive core with strong defensive abilities as well. They've held teams, ever since their loss to Dexter where they gave up 50 points, they have not given up more than 14 the rest of the way. 2 shutouts, 1 game holding to 7, 1 game holding to 3, and 2 games holding to 14. They do not give up a ton of points, and especially potent against Northville, who is competing for a slice of the co-championship pie, where they held them to 14 points and a 21-14 victory in what now proves to be a huge game in terms of the standings. We saw Northville in week 1 in their win against Lake Orion. 14-13 wasn't as strong as they would prove to be later on in the season, but to have a win against them in September 26th, about week 5, that proved to be huge. So this is a very dangerous team, but now let's look to the Howell Highlanders. So for Howell, you want to talk about a team who has been on fire lately, then this is definitely going to be one of them. Currently, they're tied for 25th in the Detroit News State Super 25. Meanwhile, Brighton, the Bulldogs, are just a little bit higher at the 21st spot in the state. But you want to talk about one of the hottest teams so far in their past few games since their week 3 loss to Northville, which is going to be crucial for these standings at the end of this week, at the end of this season. Since that week 3 loss to Northville, they have outscored their opponents 177-21. That is in a combination of 4 games. 177 points in 4 games, over 40 points per game, and only given up 21 in total. Insane numbers. Brighton has held up a similar score sheet when it comes to their season. They average 34.7 points per game and allow only 6.3 points per game. But then you look to Howell, 36.5 points per game, a little bit higher, and allowing only 9.7 points per game. Also a little bit higher than the defense of Brighton, but these really are 2 teams where the numbers are just astounding. And Howell does most of their damage the old school way, the run and ground and pound kind of old school way. They don't pass the ball very often at all. And if their last week's win over Novi is any example, they threw the ball, twice. They threw the ball twice. Otherwise, 43 carries for 275 yards on the ground, and a lot of that work being done by their junior running back, Bryce Kish, who rushed for 11 carries and 81 yards and 3 touchdowns in that big win over Novi. It's the way they do business, and it's their identity this season, so it's going to present a very tough challenge for Brighton if Brighton wants to get that conference championship, or if Howell, as the defending champions, wants a piece of the pie themselves. It's going to be a great and interesting match. Will the firepower of either team win over the other, or will it be a very tough, fought out game that goes down to the wire? It's going to be hard to tell, and the only way you can tell is by tuning in to Drive to the Game this Friday night. 6:50 is the pregame show before we kick things off at 7 p.m. to WJR with Chris Renwick and our broadcasters. I hope you guys can join us. It's going to be a great, great game with championships on the line, and also a little brown jug on the line as well, as this is also a trophy game for these two teams that goes back way in their rivalry history. So this is Giovanni Moceri from Drive to the Game, and we will see you there.
Okay, look forward to having everybody tuning in on Friday night. Remember, Drive to the Game just before kickoff here on WJR. I want to thank Giovanni Moceri for setting the table for everything we need to know about Howell and Brighton. Also want to thank Ethan Pavey from Groves High School and his interview with Lauren Justenberg, longtime PA announcer at Hamilton High School. Really good getting to know him and his dedication to the athletic programs there on the west side of the state. And also want to thank our good friend, Gabe Loper from Wayne State University, who hopped on. We talked about the importance of the backup quarterback in the great game of football. We look forward to having you tune in every Wednesday night. Again, this is the show Open Mic. We come on every Wednesday at 8 o'clock. We will see you next time. I'm your host, Johnny Kane. Until then, Godspeed.